Welcome back after the Easter holiday. I'm David Stiernholm and this is Done, the podcast about how good structure at work lets you take control of your workday. In today's episode, I'll share what you can do to more easily get the focus time you need. But first, fellow Done listener Ylva, she wrote me and shared a method where she uses whiteboard in a particular way to feel less stressed when things are just too much. I wrote a short blog post about her method, and you'll find a link to it in the show notes. One way to make more time for the tasks you don't automatically have time for is to reserve time for them in your calendar. You simply book a meeting with yourself to work on the things you really want to get done that you never seem to have time for. This is completely in line with my rule of thumb that says that anything time-dependent should be put in the calendar. If something is to be done at a specific time, it should be in the calendar. If it's to be done at some point during a certain day, but it doesn't matter when during the day, it's better to put it on the to-do list instead, with that particular day as the due date. Then you can be more flexible during the day with what you do and when. In this case, when you need to decide on a time on a certain day that you're working on a specific task in order to make time for it at all, you make the task time-dependent and it belongs in the calendar. But if you do, you have to do that particular task at the scheduled time. Right now, I meet many clients one-on-one within the framework of my personal structure training service. Strikingly often, getting time for something other than meetings becomes the most topical theme in such conversations. It turns out that many prioritize a new meeting that pops up over the time set aside to just work alone on something important. Even if the person who needs more time for certain tasks has decided not to remove these bookings of alone time, but instead move them to another time within the same week, everything can fall apart when there's no free space later in the week to move to. The reason is often that the block of free time is large and the gaps between meetings are small, albeit many in number. If you often have to cancel your own time despite having booked it, divide it into smaller portions so that you can more easily find another place for it if necessary. Instead of booking a block of 2 hours on Wednesday mornings, book 4 half hours together at the same time. If you have to rearrange your calendar because a very important meeting comes up, you might be able to find 3 free half hours every now and then on Thursday and Friday, and maybe even half an hour on Tuesday. You get your own time, just not where it was initially booked. Do this. If you recognize that you often need to remove booked personal time, try dividing it into smaller parts. If this sounds reasonable to you, look through your calendar and divide the alone time bookings that are there today into smaller slots. You can keep the total time, but make smaller portions of it. You can leave them together. Only spread them out if and when you need to. And of course, don't overdo it and split the booking into such small fragments that it's hardly worth starting on the task you had in mind. But surely it can be split into smaller parts than it is today. Because if you pre-divide your own bookings when you make them in the first place, you'll be able to move them around more easily if and when you need to. You're more likely to keep the time you want and get more of the important yet non-urgent tasks done in a more timely manner. In addition, you can more easily make yourself available for emergency appointments when it really matters. What tricks do you have to maintain your scheduled personal time? Write to me at david@stiernholm.com and tell me. Every trick to increasingly master your calendar is worth its weight in gold, not least for me, so I'm all ears. Thank you for listening to this edition of Done. Welcome back next week.